Hey, welcome to the Fit Parent Podcast. It's just Jeff today. Amy was planning to be here, but had a hiccup, and um, I'm actually a little bit behind on recording these. Not behind, but we're normally probably a month out in advance, and we're not. And so that's actually going to be where I start today, along with the fact that I don't have my normal voice. If you can hear it, my voice is slightly gone. This is also going to be a slightly shorter episode than normal because it's just me and I'm only talking to my camera. But I hope that you will find it valuable. Kind of a little bit of my experience of the last few weeks. And generally, when I do come on here and I'm by myself, I tend to be a little bit more vulnerable. So maybe that will be valuable for you right now. So I don't have my voice right now. I mean, I have it, but if you can tell, it sounds a little bit different. I don't really have the same volume or projection. And people are like, "Are you sick?" And I said, "No, I just lost my voice." And they said, "How?" And I said, "Yelling." And they were like, "At a concert?" And I said, "No." Wednesday, so this is Friday as I record this. Wednesday, we have some out of town friends in town this week. Friends that some of our closest friends in the world, but they live in Virginia now. We don't get to see them as often, and they're up for the week. And we were gonna get all the kids together because it's us and them and one other family. We're all three families are very close, and there's 10 kids between us, and they're all age like 2.5 to 9. There's a lot of there's three boys, our oldest Levi, and they each have one boy who are all born within 6 months of each other. There's a couple of girls that are the same age. Our twins are the same age as one of the daughters. Like it's really a fun but chaotic gaggle of kids, and we wanted to get them together, and we were going to go to the pool. It's about 45 minutes away to the place that we were going to go to the pool, which is a little bit of endeavor in and of itself. But so we're going around Wednesday morning. We're trying to get our act together, and there's all kinds of things happening, as there is with chaos and kids, and they weren't listening particularly well most of the morning. We were having a challenge, and I was just kind of getting overstimulated and frustrated with the lack of listening. And it was me with just the three of them for a bit because Megan had to do a little bit of work. So it was a couple hours where she was working, and it was just me with the three kids. And we got our trampoline in the backyard. I think I mentioned that to you. So we got our trampoline in the backyard, and so we were out that side with the trampoline, and then they just start, every now and then it just becomes a thing, right? It's just another opportunity for there to be arguments and not listening. So it ends up being that it ends on a bit of a bummer of a note where people aren't listening and they're not being safe. So then I got to get them off, and then they're not listening. And so then I got to hold the boundary of like, hey, if you're not going to go off, I have to come on there and I have to take you off. So then I have to go on there and I have to drag a kid screaming off out of my backyard. And we have, a relatively private backyard, but we're still in a neighborhood, and it's not exactly like my kids are quiet. So they're screaming their heads off, or my daughter's screaming her head off as I'm bringing her inside. And then she's crying her head off for 30 minutes when we get inside. And then my boys are getting, on each other's nerves. And so then there's that, and I'm just getting overstimulated, and we need to go to the grocery store. Like, that needs to happen. And then we got to pack up the kids so that we can go to the pool. We got to go to the grocery store first, so that we have that to pack. And just needed to get a couple of things. Like, we just need to get some fruit to bring with us to the place. And I didn't want to go with the kids because it just adds time to do it with them. And the grocery store is just 2 minutes down the road. So I was like, I'm just going to try to run out to the grocery store. But the chaos of that 45 minutes leading to me getting into the car to go to the grocery store and recognizing that I'm already late. Like, we're already late. Like, there's no chance. We were supposed to be there at noon. It's 45 minutes away, which would mean we would need to leave our house at 11:15, which means we need to start trying to get all the kids in the car by like 11. And it was 10:15. And I hadn't even gone to the grocery store yet. We haven't packed anything. Nobody's in their bathing suit. So it was like, yeah, ain't no chance that this is happening, even if I can pull off the grocery run in 15 minutes which would have been fairly quick. It was going to be like, we're going to be late. Like we're going to be late. It's going to be frustrating. And I'm overwhelmed and frustrated. And so I got in the car and I was trying very hard. I try very hard, because I've had a few moments where I have not done this well, where I've raised my voice or gotten frustrated. Certainly at the kids, tried really, really hard not to do that. I've only really had one or two of those moments, and it was the worst that I've ever felt. Was when I like raised my voice at my kids, and so I try very, very hard not to do it. But it also is like, even if I just let out a noise of exasperation around them, like if I just go not at anybody in particular, but just out of frustration and overwhelm and overstimulation, where I just can't handle it anymore, and I'm just in the room, that scares them, which is understandable. Like, to them, I'm a big guy and it's not a particularly pleasant sound. And so they get scared, and I don't love that feeling for them. And so I'm trying very hard not to do that around them. I've been trying for a while, and I've been relatively successful at not making those sorts of noises around. But forgive the drink. I'm going to have to pause for drinks during this, because normally I let Amy talk during these pauses. So I got in the car, and I get in the car and I'm driving out, and I go to call my wife, try to call Megan, because I needed to get clarity on one thing I needed to get from the store. And we weren't able to talk as I was leaving because the kids were all screaming and crying. And so I try to call her, and the kids are still screaming and crying. 2-3 minutes later, I hear it as soon as she answers the phone. And I was like, okay, never mind. I'll just figure it out. And we hung up, and that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back with my frustration. And I just let out just screamed as loud as I could in my car, as like a catharsis, to try to like get it out of my body, because I was so frustrated and I couldn't handle it any longer. I was like, I have to get this out of my body. And I just screamed. I didn't really think about it. It was like instinct. I was just like, and I screamed so loud that I literally came back, and I was like, oh, my voice is like impacted by that, like how loudly I screamed, which was not my favorite moment. That's something for me that I'm like, don't love that I felt like I needed to do that. From a mental, emotional ability to handle things, I feel like there's probably some better skills that I could have to do that. But it was an indicator for me, again, of the idea of feeling overwhelmed, and how our ability to deal with overwhelm and overstimulation and frustration leads to our actions. Like, it drives our actions. So it because the analogy for that is, or the story and the connection point for me, is the early part of July is always a crazy time for our family. We have the 4th of July, then the next week's our anniversary, then it's my wife's birthday, and then this family usually comes into town this week, and somewhere in there we usually try to take a weekend away. And so that was how it went down this week, which was like, all right, we didn't have, I basically lost at least one work day, if not more than one, each of the last 4 weeks. And that adds up, right? Where I only have 3.5-4 work days, if I'm losing 25+% of them over the course of 4 weeks, like at some point that adds up, and I have to prioritize the things that are the most important. So it's taking care of my clients and doing calls with my clients and those sorts of things. And so things that have gone by the wayside, or I have not been as consistent with over the last 4 weeks, have been this podcast. I have not recorded as many episodes as I might normally do during this period of time. Part of that is because we normally record on Fridays and missed a couple of Fridays because of those things. And I just didn't think to make it up. Normal content on my social media, email marketing. I haven't sent an email in 3 weeks as I sit here recording this and hoping that maybe I have the time and I'm able to pull off sending one today. And working out for me has also fallen by the wayside, which is not normally the case. Now I've been still really consistent with my movement. Like I've still gotten almost every single day more than 10,000 steps. I've gotten, my nutrition's been on point aside from the going out to eat. We talked about this on the last episode that Amy and I did together. Nutrition's been on point aside from those times going out to eat. Movement's been great. And I've tried to do workouts where possible. But I have not carved out the time because, again, sometimes what happens is the urgent crowds out the important. And that's where we kind of find ourselves. And so I did not handle overwhelm with my business particularly well, because it impacted what I was able to do. Flip side of that, what ends up happening is this is a cyclical thing where I'm feeling overwhelmed in my business. So then I feel overwhelmed in general. And then my kids are doing things that make me feel overwhelmed. And I'm coming into that experience at a 7 out of 10 on my overwhelm scale. And then they don't have any room to be kids. And so then that takes me over the top. And then when we get to that over the top spot, then I kind of get into a spot where it's like, okay, now we get into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And when we get into fight, flight, or freeze mode, that is, we're no longer thinking with our logical brain. We're thinking with our reptilian brain. That's what happens when we get really stressed. Like when we get really stressed, we go into survival mode. We go into, in the people's like, oh, I'm in survival mode. It's like, sometimes it's like literally you start to function in survival mode because your brain kind of triggers that on, and you don't make decisions with the logical side of your brain. And so that was what happened with me getting so overwhelmed that I needed. And so then we try to get something out, like we try for something that's going to give us that momentary relief because we're so brimmed up. Like if I'm at a 10 out of 10 on my overwhelm scale, my body goes, I can't handle this. I need to let some of it out. And we don't look for the most effective way to get out. We look for the quickest way to get out. So that's me screaming. That's hitting something. That's, going to food or social media or whatever dopamine quick fix hit that we can get is going to help us feel better in the moment. And that's what we do when we're stressed. And so when people talk about stress eating, that's where we get into the spot where it's like, I'm trying to solve a problem with how I feel in my body by something else that is going to make me immediately feel something that is more positive than what I'm currently feeling. And so there are not a lot of choices that we tend to instinctively make in those moments that tend to be super duper positive, because there are not a lot of things that are super duper positive that you can get right away. That's the unfortunate thing, is there's not a lot of things that I can, like, good usually takes time. And so there's a couple things that I'm noticing in and of myself throughout this period, as well as I've talked with a lot of clients about recently and want to share with you, which is there's two sides to stress management. I talked about this one in the one about stress, which is way back in the 20s or the 30s episode. I think it's called the one about stress. And there's two components to stress management and the impact of, if we can manage our stress, how that can impact our fitness and nutrition and overall health. Quick sip of water. So the two sides are our proactive and our reactive. Meaning, our proactive is, am I starting the day at a 3 or am I starting the day at a 7? And that just gives me the amount of room that I have for the inevitable stress of life to come my way. Like, my kids are going to be kids. Like, they're not going to listen all the time. They're going to get upset. They're going to throw tantrums. Like, they all got upset this morning because we told them they had to go to daycare today. Like, even though it was water play day, they were still upset because they wanted to stay home because they were having fun. And we're always going to have stressors, and those are not in our control. Like stress in and of itself is not a good or a bad thing. Like, my kids having a tantrum is not inherently a bad thing. It's actually a positive thing for them if they learn how to regulate their emotions. But if I respond to it poorly because of my own stress, then I can make their tantrum a negative thing because of the response to it. The response is what makes something good or bad, whether it's productive or not productive, whether it's helping us or hurting us. And so the stressor, the thing that's happening, is neither good nor bad. I had a great moment a couple days ago, probably more recently than that, but I can think of one a couple days ago where one of my kids was having an absolute meltdown. And I was really proud of how I handled it. Like, stayed super calm, helped them feel like, hey, it's an understandable feeling. You're allowed to feel that way. And at the same time, the behavior that you did was not okay. So this is how we're going to rectify the situation. Was super proud of how I handled it. That was a kid having a tantrum that was a net positive for both of us. So again, we don't want to just attribute the fact that, like, hey, so-and-so is not doing the right stuff, therefore, or this thing's happening, that means it's bad. It's not always that way. Like, working out is a stressor. My wife and I bought our house. We bought our house in October of 21. We bought a minivan 3 weeks before that. So we bought progression of events. Minivan, close on our house beginning of October, close on our house end of October, and then our twins are born middle of November. So we had a 19-month-old newborn twins who were 3 weeks preemie, a brand new house and a brand new minivan. And at the time, I had made $10,000 coaching online in 18 months. And I'd spent $10,000 on business coaches. And I was still training a decent amount in person. And I was interviewing for a job at Timberland, the shoe company, which is the headquarters is a mile away from my house, my new house. And I had kind of a tentative offer to go work there as an analyst and make a pretty good salary with a lot of advancement opportunity at a good company. And it was a moment where, like, that was really stressful to try to make that decision. And again, the circumstances were stressful. And my wife, who, again, marry the right woman. That is my tip for everybody. Marry the right person. My wife encouraged me to kind of continue to pursue this coaching thing because she thought that I had it, even though I wasn't sure if I did, and stepped into it and pulled back from the job offer. And turns out that they actually reorged and the job went away right after I would have started, and so it wouldn't have necessarily been a good thing, but then it was like, okay, I got to make this business a success. And that's a stressful thing. That was a stressful time because it was newborn twins, 18-month-old, new house, trying to make a business work so that we could, be successful with it. That's a stressful thing. But how I responded to it was actually building a successful business that, by at least my standard, your standard might be different, has been really quite good. Now, do I make millions or $250,000? I don't make bonkers money doing this, but, like, I've made enough money for us to be able to live and for me to be able to be around with my kids. And in that way, I feel successful. But the stressor was not inherently good or bad. It actually turned out to be a good thing because of how I responded to it. Now, that could have buried me. And we could have ended up in a really bad spot. And so the stressor in and of itself is neither good nor bad. It's how we respond to it. So again, I come back to Wednesday. We're really in a tough spot. The stressor of the kids having the tantrum and all this kind of stuff, and the fact that we're going to be late, that was neither good nor bad. But how I was responding to it was not great because I was starting the day at probably a 7 or an 8 because I was already feeling behind with work. Because on Tuesday, again, this was my own choice. On Tuesday, I decided to take the day off of work, most of the day off of work, so that I could golf with my out-of-town friend. And I don't golf very often. This was my first real round of golf all year. And I haven't seen him in a while. And so got to go golfing and had a great time. It was wonderful. But then I was feeling behind because that was one of my work days. And so I was feeling behind, and then Wednesday was that. So I was going into it as an 8. And so then I didn't have the room or the bandwidth or the capacity for a normal level of stress, because, or a normal level of stress felt bigger because I was starting higher. So when we think about proactive stress relief, this is things that we can do so that we can start our day with more room for the inevitable stressors that come our way. And so these are longer term things. Like in general, going to golf and seeing a friend is a stress reliever for me. If it hadn't been for the fact that I did several things like that over the course of the last month and I'm feeling already behind, that would have been probably some planning on my part to do that, to communicate with my team and the people working with me, like, hey, this is going to be a little bit more challenging, and expectations. What is it going to look like? All of that would have made sense. That would have helped with proactive expectations. Again, drive perception. Perception drives reality. So if I had reasonable expectations, that would have been a little bit different. But doing things that fill you up, like going to dinner with friends or drinks with friends or calling a friend on the phone or going to see a movie or getting your nails done or getting a massage or whatever it is that you like to do. Those are things you want to do regularly, but you aren't necessarily doing daily or weekly. Doing regular things to fill your cup. Then you get into more frequency, which is like, hey, weekly, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get together with a group of guys or group of girls to talk about life. I'm going to go to a Bible study. I'm going to go to church. Call my parents. I'm going to have a date night. I'm going to have a workout routine. I'm going to do menu planning or meal planning. I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to order this thing, whatever it is that you're doing on a regular basis. And then you get down to daily basis. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to journal. I'm going to do a brain dump. I'm going to practice gratitude by thinking of 3 things that I'm thankful for. I'm going to do a quiet time. I'm going to sing. All of these things that I can do on a regular basis that I do regardless of how I feel. And I do with the idea of I'm constantly trying to create space for myself to have room to deal with life's whatever, because I know that I'm taking care of myself. And so doing something like, hey, I'm going to do a brain dump on paper at night every day so that I am not waking up in the morning with all of these things on my mind, I'm able to kind of do that. That's the proactive stuff. That's the stuff you do regardless of what the situation is. And the more we do that, the more we end up having that space. And so things that when you get the moment where you're like, that felt like an overreaction, like you stub your toe and then you get really upset. You're like, that hurt, but that felt like a little bit much. That usually happens because we're already stressed, which means that we're not proactively taking care of ourselves. The flip side of it is the reactive stuff, the things that we do in response to it in the moment, for how do we actually handle the stress. And so this has been my big observation. I've heard this from a couple different people, a couple different sources, but again, when we are feeling stress, it is not a mental game. Like, it is a mental game in like how we're perceiving it, but we feel stress in our bodies. And so we can't solve a problem in the mind with the mind. We can't tell ourselves to just not be stressed about it. When our kids are screaming at us, or we get some bad news, or whatever it is that we're feeling stressed about, we can't think our way out of that, because again, our logical brain isn't working in that moment. We're in our reptilian brain. We're in our instinctive brain. So we have to get out of our brain, out of our head, and into our body. And so how I did that the other day was by screaming. Now, is that the best way for me to get out of my head and into my body? No, of course not. But it certainly helped. It was cathartic because I was stressed and I got out of my head, and instead of thinking about it, I got out of my body, and it was physical, right? You've seen things like punching a pillow or whatever it is. But I think that there are more productive ways to learn those skills. And so what I'm going to try to do personally is I'm going to continue to explore these. I'll tell you some of the ones that I use. Clearly, they're not all working, but I'm trying to find more of these skills. And so I'm actually going to be going to therapy for it, because I think it's valuable to do it. I've done therapy at different seasons in my life. I think the mental and emotional health very much is linked to the physical health side of things. And I know that I want some more skills for how to proactively handle this. But again, proactively and reactively. But again, what was one of the things that I wasn't doing proactively during the 2.5, 3 weeks I wasn't working out? So I wasn't working out, which wasn't helping me feel better. I wasn't, I mean, there were a lot of things that I wasn't doing that were proactive that might have helped me not feel like I was at an 8 to start the day. But reactive things that we can do are, again, trying to get out of our body and into our, or out of our head and into our body. So next to me, I can't quite reach them right here, but next to my desk, I have a Rubik's Cube, I have a stress ball, and I have juggling balls. And they're literally there so that if I have a particularly challenging call or something like that, in a minute or two in between calls, I'll just try to do something with my hands to get out of my head and into my body a little bit. We can do deep breathing. We can do a 4-second in, 7-second hold, 8-second exhale. Do 5 or 6 of those. Don't do it while you're driving. But you could do it somewhere different. Close your eyes and do that. You can go for a walk or try to move something heavy work, deep work. Try to lift something heavy that might be around. Trying to find that productive way of handling it. And then finally, we'll sip, trying to remember that what am I instinctively trying to do right now? I am trying to unload some of the stress that I currently am feeling. And what we're looking to do is your body, it's like a hot potato. It's like, I got to get this out of my hands. And so it's very easy in those moments to displace that onto other people, because we don't have a place for it. And so that actually usually ends up leading to further stress and conflict, because we end up in a spot where we're like, man, I whatever with, that was an overreaction with the kids or with my spouse or at work or whatever it is, because we're trying to get it out of our body because it feels wrong in our body. So trying to think about what's the best worst possible strategy, meaning like, all right, in that moment with my kids, I didn't have, from a bandwidth perspective, and I tried deep breathing, I tried a couple of things and just it wasn't sticking. I didn't do all of them, but it wasn't sticking. I tried to make the best bad decision possible, which was to go scream in the car when I was out of the house, as opposed to scream near the kids or whatever it was, to try to minimize that so that I don't compound the feelings that I'm feeling with, all right, I made it worse. Same thing when it comes to like, hey, I haven't been great with my exercise, right? This morning we did our workout, my wife and I. It was the first one that I've done, and it's been probably 2.5 weeks since I did a full workout. Like I did some like little things here and there, but since I've done a full workout, it would be easy, because today was really hard because it had been a couple of weeks, for me to either A, push myself too hard and kind of beat myself into a pulp almost as punishment for not having worked out for a while. So then I'm compounding the fact that I am getting back to it, and or let my emotions for how I'm feeling about it and how I'm feeling about the fact that it was so hard impact somebody else in the room, Megan, or even my own workout in doing the thing. Because honestly, I wanted to give up about halfway through. I was like, this is just freaking hard. I don't want to do this right now. The fact that I pushed through it, and Megan asked me, she's like, how was that? Like, I know you're having a hard time. Like, do you feel any better? I was like, no, I honestly don't feel better in this moment, but I know that I will feel better the next time that I go to do a workout. I will be way more likely to actually do my workout the next time that I do it, as a result of doing it this time. So I don't want to make a bad situation worse by doubling down on the things that have made it bad. And so try to make the best bad decision that I could make, which was like, listen, I'm not going to have a good workout today. We were late. We were like, but what's the best I can make of this tough situation is what we did today. And that is less about what I'm going to get out of this particular moment, but more about what's going to happen long term, because it's going to compound in one way or the other. And so what I oftentimes see is that folks are in, my clients are in a spot where the real problem with their fitness and their nutrition is not in the gym. It's not in the kitchen. It's in the 12 square inches at the top of their head, where they're not able to deal with the stress in their lives. And again, this is something that I struggled with too. We're not able to deal with the stress in our lives. And so then we look for solutions in the wrong places. Sorry, that was a yawn. We were up late last night. I'm going to sip of my energy drink. Hang on. We look for solutions, and we look for the immediate solution. We look for what's easy, convenient, comfortable, and feels good at the time. And so my encouragement to you is this, and this will be where we finish this episode. My encouragement to you is this. 1, take the time to build your reactive skills when it's lower stakes and it doesn't feel super stressful. The idea that I'm going to do that deep breathing in the middle of a tantrum for the first time was a little bit silly. So I practice it with something that's like really very minorly stressful or annoying. And now I'm able to sometimes do it with my kids. But the other thing is do the proactive stuff that you can do. But all of these things are so that we're not trading long-term results for temporary comforts. Don't trade long-term results for temporary comforts. Because again, we're going to have moments where stressors happen, and we're going to have moments where we are overwhelmed by it. Like this month was an overwhelming month for me from a work and life perspective. And the month kind of won a little bit. July beat me a little bit. But that does not mean that I cannot. There's 5-6 days left in July as I record this. Doesn't mean that July's over. Doesn't mean that I can't have today be great. It doesn't mean I can't have tomorrow be great. And so we just look at the next opportunity to do that next thing. So don't trade those temporary, like where I'm currently at, for the long-term stuff. And it's really easy when we just focus on the thing right in front of us, as opposed to trying to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. So hopefully this was a quick little blurb for you. And I also kept it short because I don't really have much of a voice. And so hopefully next time you hear me, I will have my normal voice back, and we'll be back in the saddle and rocking and rolling. But we'll talk to you soon.